So get this. The average smartphone user taps, swipes, and clicks their device over 2,600 times a day. And if you're in the top 10%, that number literally skyrockets to over 5,400 daily interactions. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the meticulous design and the invisible mechanics behind those staggering numbers. We'll look at exactly why we just can't seem to put our phones down. We often think of our devices as these harmless, inert tools just waiting patiently for our command, right? But the reality operating just behind the glass is a highly engineered, deeply psychological system, and it is absolutely fascinating to deconstruct.
Let's start with a scenario we have all lived through. It usually begins with a very specific, kind of mundane rationalization. You tell yourself, okay, I just need to check this one critical email, or let me just see what the weather's going to be like tomorrow. So, the cool glow of the screen illuminates a dark room, you tap the app, and suddenly, you blink, shift your posture, and realize you've just woken up from a scrolling trance 2 hours later. It's pitch black outside, your original task is completely forgotten, and you're just left wondering where on earth the time went. Look, it happens to the best of us, and that loss of agency feels incredibly visceral. But what you really need to understand right off the bat is that losing those 2 hours, it's not a failure of your personal willpower. Actually, it is pure, meticulous, and highly effective design.
Because we're no longer just using individual apps anymore. We've stepped into what's known as the attention economy. Think of it as a massive, multi-billion-dollar digital marketplace where your time and your focus are the ultimate currency. Advertisers, data brokers, massive tech conglomerates, they are actively buying up your attention every single second of the day. And to keep you engaged, they use incredibly powerful, invisible algorithms engineered specifically to hijack your brain chemistry. The entire architecture of these platforms is built from the ground up to keep you trapped behind the screen, endlessly generating data for them.
So, let's peel back the layers. Layer 1, the chemistry of the scroll.
Now, there's a massive, widespread misconception about how our brain chemistry actually operates in this space. If you ask most people, they'll tell you dopamine is simply the pleasure chemical. But the scientific reality, it's far more complex. Dopamine isn't the reward itself, it's actually the anticipation of pleasure. And, from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes perfect sense. Our ancestors didn't get a massive dopamine hit just from finding food. They got the hit from the anticipation while foraging, which biologically drove them to keep moving, keep searching, and ultimately survive. When you apply that to modern technology, it's the craving of the unknown that keeps you hooked, not the actual payoff of whatever content you find.
And this biological quirk leads us directly to a psychological concept called variable ratio reinforcement. Discovered by psychologist B.F. Skinner back in the 1950s, this principle proves that subjects become completely obsessed when rewards are handed out at random, unpredictable intervals. Las Vegas casinos mastered this decades ago. They use flashing colors, the absolute lack of clocks, the illusion of near misses, all to keep people pulling those levers. While Silicon Valley adopted this exact same blueprint. When you swipe down to refresh your feed, you literally have no idea if you're going to get a boring ad, a message from a friend, or a hilarious video. You're literally pulling the lever of a digital slot machine right there in your pocket. Your brain biologically craves that exact uncertainty.
Which brings us to layer 2, your digital twin.
Let's look at the illusion of control here. You might think you're in the driver's seat when you browse, selectively choosing what to click on, but get this, 90% of your digital journey is dictated entirely by the algorithm. Somewhere in a massive server farm, there is a predictive digital twin of you. And this AI doesn't just look at what you intentionally hit like on. No, it actively tracks metrics you probably don't even realize you're generating. It measures your typing speed, the gyroscope data showing exactly how you hold your phone, even the exact millisecond you hover over an image before scrolling past. It aggregates millions of these tiny micro-behaviors to understand what precisely triggers your curiosity. It learns your psychological vulnerabilities way better than you consciously know them yourself.
Let's walk through a very real 2 a.m. scenario to see how this cold calculation is weaponized. Say you start the evening watching lighthearted comedy, but the predictive AI notices a slight half-second hesitation on a somewhat melancholic post. It immediately infers you might be feeling isolated. So what does it do? It pivots. Instead of letting the content run dry so you can just turn off the screen and finally go to sleep, the system exploits your current emotional state. It starts feeding you a highly curated stream of content that validates that exact loneliness, just to keep your eyes glued to the glass. It has zero empathy. It doesn't care about your sleep cycle. Its sole programmatic objective is maximizing your watch time.
And that escalation leads us to layer 3, weaponizing evolution.
So the human brain is equipped with this incredibly highly tuned threat detection mechanism. The amygdala naturally prioritizes danger, which means Anger and division spread much, much faster and wider than joy or contentment. We are biologically wired to pay hyper-focused attention to moral outrage because, historically, identifying threats kept our tribes safe. While the algorithm understands this flawlessly, because its only goal is to maximize your retention, it naturally pushes you toward extreme viewpoints. These systems actively A/B test headlines and imagery in real time just to find the exact phrasing that triggers your maximum outrage. They build impenetrable echo chambers around you, stoking tribalism simply because a divided, angry user is a highly engaged user.
This entire system fundamentally alters how we construct our social identities too. Just consider the evolution of the like button. Its original invention in the early days of social media was just a simple, well-intentioned way to spread positivity, maybe acknowledge a friend's update. But the current reality? It's entirely different. It has morphed into this heavy, ticking metric of our social worth. We are engaging in the gamification of human relationships, trading real-world, meaningful connection for a constant, hollow loop of digital validation. It basically turns our daily lives into a non-stop, curated performance for an invisible audience, and we're left obsessively checking the scoreboard to see how we rank.
Okay, but here's the good news. Let's talk about the solution, reclaiming your mind. Faced with an army of supercomputers running billions of dollars of code, it is completely normal to feel a bit outgunned. But listen to me, you are not powerless. Breaking the spell starts by radically altering your digital environment. First, turn off all non-human notifications. Just silence that artificial urgency that constantly yanks you out of reality. Second, switch your phone screen to grayscale. By systematically removing those bright, candy-colored notification badges, you literally strip the slot machine of its visual power. You actively deprive your dopamine system of the shiny triggers it craves, which makes the device incredibly boring to look at. And third, you must welcome boredom, not as a chore, but as a critical biological reset.
Think about it. Historically, humanity's greatest ideas didn't come from a state of constant stimulation. They came from moments of idle boredom, staring out a window, taking a quiet walk in the woods, or simply daydreaming. Reflection, creativity, and genuine peace only live in those quiet, empty spaces. When we constantly fill every spare microsecond of our day with the digital noise of a glowing screen, we are literally starving our brains of the downtime fundamentally necessary to actually think deeply, to process complex emotions, and to just exist in a state of equilibrium. Because at the end of the day, your time is finite. It is literally your life slipping through the hourglass. Your attention is not just some marketing metric for a tech company. It is the summation of the minutes, the hours, and the days you actually get to spend on this earth. You should absolutely never let a line of code buy your most valuable, irreplaceable asset for pennies.
So the next time you reach into your pocket out of pure habit to fill a quiet moment, I really want you to pause. Take a deep breath, look at the device in your hand, and ask yourself this single critical question. Am I using this tool, or is this tool using me? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I truly hope it helps you reclaim a little bit of your quiet space today.